The following is a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio.
Welcome back to the UAB Director's Chair. He is the athletic director for your UAB Blazers, Mark Ingram on the left-hand side. I'm Tony Kurre. And, of course, the show airs at least 5 days a week right here on TKR. So happy to have it back in 2025. You can also, of course, hear their other show they do with the coaches and stuff called The Inferno. Feel free to check that out as well. Both podcasts available wherever you get your favorite podcast. We greatly appreciate that. Mark, as we're doing this show here, there was some really sad news last night about a plane crash. It took 67 lives, 64 in a plane, of course, 3 service members. And you and I were just talking briefly before the show. And I know a lot of people may see this 3 or 4 or 5 days after we actually recorded and after the actual plane crash itself. But I know you had a very interesting take on that because of the fact that it was flying into Washington, D.C. But just talk about that a little bit, please.
Well, yeah, Tony, I mean, it's a tragedy that, by now everybody's aware of what happened. But it was a flight from Wichita, Kansas, and Wichita State, of course, is in the American Conference in basketball. Well, in all sports, they just don't have football. And so I was texting with the athletic director, Kevin Saul from Wichita State, just saying we were thinking about them and hope that, everybody that he knew and their friends and family were safe. But 60 people is a lot of people, and they're going to have they had a home men's basketball game during the event. They had a ladies game, women's basketball, on the road at East Carolina. So they didn't think they had anybody from the athletic department on the flight. But the university, every university has people in government relations who go to their state capital a lot and to Washington a lot. And they were trying to determine, do they have any other university officials on that flight? But certainly in a community like Wichita, even though it's a good sized city, they're going to know people that were on that plane or be very close to people that knew people on that plane. And so it's really going to affect their community in a major way. And, any loss of life is sad. But things like that are so tragic, particularly, in mass like that. An accident of that nature that magnitude was just, it'll be devastating to that community and everybody that was around it. So we're just, we're thinking about them. And that's one of the things about a conference. You've got these cities that you go to, and you, in your own way, you become connected to those cities through your conference affiliation, and then through the relationships you have with the staff, on those campuses. So certainly we'll do a moment of silence at our basketball game versus Charlotte, which is Saturday. We'll do that, thinking about the folks in Wichita. It was a national tragedy. Yeah.
I know a lot of people, always use that stat. You have a better shot at getting killed in a car crash than you do in a plane crash. And certainly statistics bow that out. But it only takes one. The other thing too is, I think we talked about this on Fox 6 this morning. We just went through the most prolific and record-setting year as far as in air travel, particularly over the holidays.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and we set records, and there were so many planes in the air and so many people traveling over the holidays, and you throw a little snow in there and just got crazy. And we're all kind of settling into the new year, and so this just was an eye opener to, hey, listen, life is precious, and don't take anything for granted, and you just never know what's part of God's plan. But it was it was really hard.
I think, Tony, when you think about the number of flights every day, it's kind of amazing this doesn't happen more often. And I guess the good thing for those of us that fly is because it doesn't, a lot of people have real anxiety about flying. And so it's a good thing that we've become more relaxed. But don't ever discount, if you know somebody that's in air traffic control, thank them for their job, because the amount of stress and pressure that they must have every day when they wake up is tremendous.
Oh man. I mean, we spoke about that. You can't have a bad day. I mean, you cannot have a bad. You can't be tired. You can't. I mean, and they are. I mean, they're human, right? Air traffic controllers, man, they are some of the salt of the earth, and they're.
I don't know how they do it. Really,
I really don't either. It's amazing stuff. Mark Ingram, the UAB athletic director. This is called the UAB Director's Chair. We do it every single week. We talk a lot of college sports. We may get into some classic rock a little bit later on. I had several people email me here, info@tonykurreradio.net, and also check out their site, uabsports.com, for tickets and more information about the House versus NCAA settlement. The formal approval will happen sometime in April, which is right around the corner. This is going to I'm assuming set the table for what college sports will look like from this point on, although I still think the landscape is still changing. The NIL, the cap, the revenue sharing, all that's involved. A lot of people are saying this is a new beginning to a very exciting time in college sports. A lot of people say we still have a lot of work to do, but several people just kind of want to know, what are we going to learn anything new in April, and what exactly is going to happen when this approval comes down?
Yeah, so the lawsuit is, it's easy to confuse a lot of pieces about it. So first of all, House versus NCAA, that is the lawsuit. But House is not Congress. It is a person whose last name is House.
Gotcha.
So start with that. Mm-hmm. So it's not the federal government suing the NCAA. And the lawsuit is based on the fact that student athletes could not make use of their own name, image, and likeness and profit from it. And so the preliminary approval was already granted by the judge, a woman named Claudia Wilkin. She's the judge in California that is presiding over the case. She granted preliminary approval in the fall with an assumption that there will be formal and final approval in April. And that's what you mentioned. Yep. And this is what happens. It's two parts. There's a 10-year back pay to those student athletes, but it's only student athletes in what is now the Power Four conferences. And the flaw there is that no student athlete could make use of their name, image, and likeness. So why is it limited to them? And why 10 years, not 20 years, not 50 years, or 100 years? I don't know. But 10 years only for those athletes. And so every school, because it's a lawsuit with the NCAA, I mean, we are a member institution. We're a member of the NCAA. So we're all participating in this back pay. So for UAB, it's going to cost us $417,000 a year for UAB athletics to pay student athletes from the Power Four conferences, not UAB student athletes, but former Power Four student athletes, $417,000 a year for the next 10 years.
Wow.
And we won't be writing a check. What it will show in the form of a withholding. The NCAA, who usually sends us money and will continue sending us money, but they will withhold $417 from us in that distribution that we've been receiving. So for the next 10 years, we and all other schools are on the hook. Now, the amount of money that your school has to pay is based on the conference that you were in during that 10-year period, which 9 of those 10 years we were in Conference USA. Mm-hmm. The amount of money determined is how many teams got into the NCAA men's basketball tournament. So from the league.
Yeah.
So we were getting one team. And so that's how because our distribution was lower than, call it the ACC and the Big Ten and the Big 12, whoever, they will have a higher amount to pay because they received more over the 10-year period. Okay. So that's how our number was determined. And so that's part one of the settlement.
Was that number about where you thought it was going to be? I mean, I'm sure you guys.
No, we thought it was going to be zero. Yeah. To really confuse this is that we weren't named in the lawsuit. Our conference was not named in the lawsuit. Only the Power Four conferences were named in the lawsuit. Mm-hmm. And at the time, Power Five, so Pac-12, they were the only ones named in the lawsuit. So we didn't think we were going to have to deal with it. And the college football playoff, which is separate from the NCAA, they, as we all know, we went to a 12-team format, and that's producing more revenue. And we all thought, because we're a participant in that, and we have always received some distribution from the college football playoff, that our distribution number was going to increase significantly. Well, back in March, what we learned was that because of this new lawsuit, this House versus NCAA, I'm talking about last March, mm-hmm. when we had to sign the new CFP contract, what we learned was we weren't really going to get any more money. Only the Power Four leagues were going to get more money, and it's a lot more money, like $20 million more money per school. But they were going to have to handle this lawsuit that we weren't named in. And so the thinking was, hey, we're going to give more money to those, but they got to deal with this lawsuit that y'all weren't named in.
But you're still paying for it. Yeah.
Well, but the lawsuit wasn't with the college football playoff. they were trying to set those teams up to be able to afford that lawsuit.
Yeah.
Okay, but the lawsuit was with the NCAA. Well, then the NCAA says, here's our formula for figuring out the payment, and it's fair because of the distribution that you all received, which is accurate.
Mm-hmm.
So really, the Power Fours got more money from the CFP, but we're helping to offset that lawsuit, so they got even better. So the revenue difference that there was already a challenge. It went from here to here, you know, and so it's a mess. But now the other part two of the settlement is future payments, revenue share payments to these student athletes, not to be confused with NIL, which we always confuse. And you say, we can revenue share with them as if we, the school, are using their name, image, and likeness for promotional purposes, and that's how that's being justified. But not to be confused with your already existing collective. So we have a collective called Magic City Impact. We will continue to have the Magic City Impact. That collective will continue to exist. And so, and it'll have its own value, but we, the athletic department, can now pay our student athletes. And so we're working through a plan to do that. And how will we do that? And we need to generate new dollars, but at least the dollars that maybe you used to give to the Magic City Impact that were not tax deductible, moving forward, you can give to the athletic department, which is tax deductible. So at least our donors and supporters can help to fund this to help us retain our best talent and go get other new, talent that's, to help us be successful. I mean, in the modern era now, Tony, unfortunately, really average coaches that are at places that are able to generate money for this will look really smart and look really good. And some of the best coaches who may find themselves at places that can't generate those dollars, they're going to lose and look like they're not good coaches, when the reality is, unfortunately, the kids who used to say, hey, how does the campus feel? And what are the academic programs? And what's the dorm like? And, are the facilities nice enough to where, they don't have to be the Taj Mahal, but do you have the adequate space for me to improve my game, to elevate and play professionally? That's what the kids, and what's my playing opportunity?
And we certainly saw that this past year.
Simply, how much are you going to pay me?
Yeah, with Ohio State and Notre Dame playing in the national championship game too, that was just funny because Ohio State they told people that we paid $20 million for our kids to play, and I'm not sure how that compares to other schools. It sounds like a lot. And then you had Notre Dame, who, because they're independent, they got their $20 million piece of the pie. They don't have to share with anybody. And of course, because they're a private institution, they don't talk about their numbers anyway. So they both got a nice really nice payday or payout, depending on how you look at it. Do you believe there will be further legislation, if you will, in the NCAA as far as like a cap number? Will this be like the NFL, where you can only spend $30 million or $40 million to make sure that it doesn't get out of control like it already is?
Well, remember this lawsuit, the NCAA is the defendant. The judge, Claudia Wilkin, is who's sort of, and the plaintiff's attorney are settling. They are agreeing upon what the settlement is, so that back pay for 10 years and how much and how to pay. It's like $2.8 billion from the NCAA to those student athletes.
Yeah.
In the NCAA, there's reserves that are going to cover about half of it. And then each institution, like I said, is going to cover the other half paid out over the next 10 years. This cap that you're asking about is $20.5 million, but it increases by like 3 or 5% every year. Mm-hmm. So year one, which is the next fiscal year, July 1 of 2025 to the following June 30th of 2026, that's year one, and the cap is $20.5 million, which you can pay to all of your athletes. But they have this formula that they worked out, which is 75% of that goes to football, 15% goes to men's basketball, 5% to women's, and 5% to all others. Now, that's not what you have to do. It's like a guideline. You can do whatever
you can spend 100% on football if you wanted to.
If you wanted to, but that creates other challenges. But that's and we're still unclear as to whether or not Title IX has any impact on this distribution or not. A lot of people think that it doesn't because these are revenue share payments based on revenue generated, and therefore Title IX doesn't apply because it's not an educational benefit. So who knows right now, Tony? We've seen rulings from both sides on that issue. But to put it in perspective, our all-in budget's like $42 million. We don't have $20.5 million we can give away.
That's insane. So you can't go over the number, but people cheat in college football. We've seen that forever.
Well,
so if you go over that number,
you can't go over 20.5 from what you are paying from your institution. Now, I said our collective still exists, so your collective can continue to also raise money.
Gotcha.
And pay more on top of the 20.5. But the NCAA has hired Deloitte and Touche to an accounting firm to be the enforcement agent and to monitor we're going to have to start reporting every deal that every student athlete has. Mm-hmm. And any deal over $600 is going to be heavily monitored and scrutinized by Deloitte. And they're going to come in and say, all right, you paid Tony $1,000. They're going to come in and see, do you, Tony Curry, actually have that kind of value in the marketplace here in Birmingham? And things like, the position you play and your playing time and your success. And I think personally that teams like football who wear helmets have a disadvantage because, remember, it's your name, your image, and your likeness. Well, if your face is covered by a helmet and a face mask, nobody knows what you look like. But in a sport like baseball, right, unless you're the quarterback, think about, really, you're the quarterback, you're the receiver, the running back who scores a lot of touchdowns, your name gets called a lot on the PA, maybe you do a on-the-field post-game interview because you had a big game and you took your helmet off, people see your face.
Yeah.
Well, you have a different value than, our left guard may be the best actual football player in terms of NFL quality talent, but the guy doesn't score touchdowns. Yeah. So it's not that he doesn't have that. He's got great value to our team, but in terms of value in the marketplace, can you put his face on a billboard and people generally know who that is? No.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the foundation here is that people are saying in the NFL, the left guard may be incredibly good and make a lot of money from the NFL team because they know what his value is. But you can't put his face up on the billboard and anybody know who he is because he has a different marketing value. And they're saying, well, why is it that the left guard for the Tennessee Titans doesn't have any endorsement deals? But we're paying the backup left guard at some SEC team $100,000 through their collective. That's ridiculous, and it is ridiculous. It's completely ridiculous.
It's funny because when I did sports radio 20 or 30 years ago, they had this thing called probation. You knew whenever the NCAA was coming to your campus, it was like there was three people you didn't want to see. You didn't want to see the IRS, you didn't want to see 60 Minutes, and you didn't want to see the NCAA, the enforcement board, because when they came calling, man, you were like, holy crap. And I mean, we get 35 shows out of it because they're like, what are they investigating? And you talk about probation. Then, of course, you'd wait for that day 2 or 3 years in. It seems like I can't remember the last time a team was put on probation for something like this. And now, of course, it's a little bit of the wild, wild west. Someone once said, if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying.
Well, Tennessee is fighting something from head coach Jeremy Pruitt where he was allegedly paying players in McDonald's bags. Do you remember this?
Mm-hmm.
Putting in these McDonald's bags and giving them cash. I don't know if they were or they weren't, but they're apparently fighting that because it is now permissible, which, even though it's my alma mater and I love them all, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with the idea that I got a speeding ticket. I was going, it was a 55-mile-an-hour zone. I was going 70. I got pulled over. I got a speeding ticket. Now, 10 years later, they widened the road. They've changed the road in some fashion, and the speed limit is now 70. I can't go back to the state and go, hey, can I get my $120 back?
Sure.
No, you can't do that, man. You broke the law. It was against the law at the time. Mm-hmm. You broke the law at the time. You got to no. So anyway, there is some of that, but the enforcement, what you were getting at, is critical. Like, we need to look, and we're begging for it. Like, it's funny, a lot of people are like, oh, that's ridiculous. They'll never be able, this accounting firm will never be able to do it. Look, man, I don't know what they can do, what they can't do. But literally everybody in the country, even the people that are having the most success with this, we are begging for the enforcement. That's the problem, is that the NCAA just doesn't have the bandwidth to cover the volume of enforcement now. The sort of new rules and what somebody, did you tamper? Did you not tamper? That's become a huge thing. People are that was, in addition to paying players what used to be a cardinal sin, tampering was too. Yep. It was just really hard to prove, because you're playing at whatever, Texas Tech, and I recruited you and I didn't get you, but I see that you're not playing very much. I could call your high school coach, who I call all the time because you were from a school in Dallas that produces a lot of talent. I call that guy all the time.
Yeah.
Call him all the time to talk about who he's got in the next class and the next class after that, and how's your seat. And I'm calling him because I want to keep a relationship, right? Well, in the past, I could say, I noticed Tony's not playing very much. Listen, man, if you're talking to him, we'd love to, if he wants to transfer, we'd love to have him. Well, you can't prove that I tampered. There's zero proof that I did that. Yeah. I mean, even if the high school coach says, well, he said this, I go, no, I didn't.
Yeah.
We talked about Tony. I asked how he was doing, but
hey,
if he took that, if he thought I implied that, I didn't do that. Yeah. I mean, there's no way to prove it.
Yeah.
Now, though, some coaches they've just got staff members who are just blatantly reaching out through social media, and these kids have agents. The agent's not going to rat the kid out. So you find out who the kid's agent is, or you just directly ask the kid, hey, man, have you got an agent? Yeah, it's Tony Kurre. And I call, what's his number? I call you and I go, hey, if you could get, Joe Smith to get into the transfer portal, I don't know what he's making, but we'd pay him this to have him.
Yeah. Final question. We talk a lot of college football, and it's great catching up with that. And then, of course, we certainly, hope that things change. You spoke about a year ago about the NCAA and March Madness expanding the teams, expanding the field, and you were talking about maybe doubling the field. Which
they should double.
They should double the field, and
they won't double. But
it looks like they're going to add 8 to 10 teams, something like that. When is that going to happen? Is that happening for this year? Is that going to be happening for next season? Is that just the beginning of them adding more teams?
I don't think it's this year. I don't know why this item is so slow to move.
Yeah, I mean, what's holding it back?
Well, they'll excuses. I mean,
but it's just more money. I mean, I don't understand why they wouldn't jump all in.
Well, some people are worried that they're only going to expand and it become more of the Power 4 teams in there, which you might say is good.
Yeah,
I would tell you that the teams that are barely 500 in the ACC, they're not good teams, and they're certainly not as good as the second and third place team in our league.
Yeah,
they're just not, because they're like 8th in their league. They're 8th or 9th in the ACC. That team should not get into the NCAA tournament, but the second or third out of our league, or the second out of the Sun Belt or something like that, or the MAC or Mountain West, 100% ought to get in, and because they're better.
Yeah.
And that's what we're hoping the expansion will do, but it won't, Tony, it won't. And so there's that reluctance by the G5 kind of people, even though the G5 are pushing for it, that they're also fearful of what that means, kind of careful what you wish for.
Yeah.
And then the Power 4 doesn't want it because they don't want to let more of us in. That would only be beneficial to them. And again, like if a team out of our league that finishes second, let's say plays in our championship but loses, gets into the tournament, those teams know that we're good, and they can't afford to lose to us. Yeah. They can't afford to lose to Cinderella. They do not want that, even though the fan base loves it, right? That's what makes the tournament so great. But these officials making these decisions do not want that.
Yeah, and I think as a fan, the teams I want to see, and I remember it was Manhattan. I think a couple of years later they were like 31-4 and didn't make it in. That is absolutely ridiculous. I don't care what conference you play in. I don't care how about your quad 1 wins or quad 2 losses or what. I don't really care about that. But if you're a team that's 25-10 or 25-8 and you don't win your conference, There should be a place outside the NIT that you get a chance to go play. You're a good basketball team. I don't know how you break that down, and I know we have people look at the schedule.
The other excuse that people make is that, it's going to interfere with the Masters.
No.
Yeah, no, really. That's what people say. They're like, Final Four happens this weekend, and
they just had the national championship game on Inauguration Day, for God's sakes. There was plenty going on.
I'm with you. And Tony, I agree. And what I would argue is, we have found a way to do anything that we really want to do.
Yeah.
There's nothing we can't do. We can do it. You know what we could do? We could start the basketball season 3 days earlier.
Mm-hmm.
3 days.
Yeah.
3 days.
Yeah.
And because if you double the field of the NCAA tournament, it's only one game.
Yeah, you don't need a week in between games.
If you go from 64 to 128, you play one game and it cuts you to 64.
Yeah. No, I love it. I have no idea why, because when you came up with that idea and talked about that, I thought that's brilliant. And I mean, as a college,
people go, we wouldn't be able to have all these venues. Of course we would.
Sure.
The NIT does it. Yeah. The NIT tells you, like, on Sunday night, you're hosting a game Tuesday.
Yeah. You'll figure it out.
You've got 48 hours to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
Why can't we do the same thing?
No doubt.
Round one is at the host institution of the higher seed.
I hear you. Great stuff, my man. We'll get into some classic rock next week. I want to sit down and come up with some good stuff, because you and I have explored classic rock. We have this new amphitheater opening up later on this spring and summer that's going to be fun, and we're going to be giving away some tickets during your show, which is going to be super cool. You and I will be sitting on some patios out there, so check that out. UABsports.com. Check out everything that's going on with those Blazers. You can check that out on the website, and we appreciate you checking out, of course, our show. You can hear the show wherever you get your favorite podcast. UAB Director Chair. Thank you, my friend. I'll talk to you next week.
Yeah. Sounds great. Thanks, Tony.
This has been a special presentation of Tony Curry Radio.